My Dodge Ram, a couple of days ago, I went to go turn it on and it was just cranking and wouldn't start. So we put the code reader on it and that was a bad fuel pump. So we replaced the fuel pump. It started up fine just right afterwards, and then we went to go drive into town and then it wouldn't start again. Same thing, cranking but no starting. So we unhooked the battery and hooked it back up again, and it started fine. We drove home, went to get in it yesterday, and it's cranking and it's not starting again.
Okay. All right. And you're just trying to figure out what's going on?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm sorry, you said...
It's not throwing me any new codes or anything like that.
Okay. And you said you replaced the pump or no?
Yes, we did replace
the
whole pump.
All right. Have we checked for spark and fuel when cranking?
The fuel, it doesn't seem like it's pumping in that little underneath the air cleaner.
Okay.
It's no fuel coming through now.
Okay. Well, if the fuel pump was replaced and we have fuel in the tank, and for whatever reason the engine isn't getting fuel pressure, then at that point this could indicate an issue with either the fuel pump circuit or that totally integrated power module, which is basically your fuse box that powers up your fuel pump. So what you would need to do is you'd actually need to check for power going to the fuel pump while cranking it over. This would confirm that the fuel pump is or is not getting power, right? So the fuse box supplies power to your fuel pump on the orange wire with a red stripe. So what you would need to do is you'd have to, like a test light or a voltmeter, I would recommend that you use a voltmeter, tap into that wire, that orange wire with the red stripe, have an assistant crank it over and verify we do have voltage on that circuit when cranking. If we don't, then that could indicate that that totally integrated power module is bad. And that would explain why you said it started after you disconnected the battery?
Yeah.
And that circuit board inside that fuse box could go bad intermittently, and sometimes it'll reboot, it'll start working again if you disconnect the battery cables from the battery, and that would make perfect sense. But I wouldn't just replace the pump based on that information, or I'm sorry, I wouldn't replace the fuse box just based on that information. I would run some tests just to make sure the engine's got spark, make sure that the fuel pump isn't getting power, so that way we know we're headed in the right direction with this diagnosis.
Okay, can I put you on hold for a minute, and can I have you tell my husband that?
Yeah, you bet. So I'm going to go ahead and explain everything that I just explained to your wife, okay?
Okay.
So if the engine's cranky but not starting, and we just replaced the fuel pump, and if the engine still isn't getting fuel, then you're going to have to check for fuel, or I'm sorry, you're going to have to check for power on the power supply wire coming from the fuse box over to your fuel pump assembly. It's the orange wire with a red stripe.
Now, something she may not have told you, all right? This has got a dealer installed anti-theft system. And I think that's what's cutting the fuel off.
Okay, so this is like an aftermarket?
I guess, it's a little black box, little tiny black box right there at the bottom of where the feet are. It has a little light that blinks. So I think that's what it is, because you play, if you play with the, locks and stuff like that, that's when it would, you could start it. I was just really trying to find a way of resetting a thing or disconnecting it.
And the only way to reset it, without any specialized tools or equipment would be to disconnect the battery cables from the battery, which you've already done. So there is no other way to reset it, unfortunately.
Is there a way that you can remove it?
I've never installed, I've installed, remote starts, but never one of these anti-theft, these aftermarket anti-thefts, that the dealership would install, like the one you're describing here. So it depends. If it goes through the computer system, you could just, you could physically remove it, but I'm thinking you'd have to tell the computer system that you remove this if it did go through the computer system, so that way everything would work. But if it didn't go through the computer system, I would think you could just completely remove it and put everything back to stock and everything would work normally. But usually that's not the case. So I would find out how it's installed, bring it back to the dealership, and have those guys or uninstall it.
So those anti-theft systems, is that something that would control the fuel pump?
Well, again, it depends on how they wire
Shut
it.
the fuel off.
I have no idea. I've never installed one. I would think if it's an aftermarket one, I would think if anything, yes, I would suspect that it would cut off power to the fuel pump. But if it's wired underneath the dash, right? You said under the driver's side?
Yeah.
I don't know how that would interfere between the fuse box and the fuel pump. I would think that would put it somewhere else. I don't know of any way to simply reset it. I would probably, if you think that's what's causing it, I would have the guys at the dealership remove it, fix it. I don't think that's going to be the case, but again, I'm not very familiar with this particular setup that you're talking about. But if it's cutting fuel, from the fuel pump somehow or another, it's cutting power to the fuel pump, then and that's what's going on, preventing it from starting, absolutely, yeah. That either call a mobile mechanic out, or if you can bring it back to the dealership, you're probably gonna have to get it towed back to the dealership because you can't get it started. So
Yeah. Okay. So what were you telling me? Well, trace the fuel. I need to check power where.
I would check power to the fuel pump. If the fuel pump's not coming on and that's preventing the engine from getting fuel, I would check power to the fuel pump on the orange wire with red stripe. And this is the wire that runs from the fuse box, the totally integrated power distribution module, to your fuel pump assembly. I would check this wire for power back at the fuel pump to ensure that the entire circuit is good, going basically right to the tank.
If I'm not getting any power up top, now could be a month. From what I read, you have to replace that whole entire system that relays that, right?
Well, if the circuit board in that fuse box in the totally integrated power module is bad, yeah, the whole thing's got to be replaced.
But is there a way of testing that to see if it's bad?
Yeah, you would check power to the pump like we've been talking about.
Right. I mean, is there any way of doing an almost test on the module to see if it's bad? Because again, if the alarm system is shutting power off.
The only other thing you could really do other than the test that we're talking about, you'd have to have a compatible scan tool, and you'd have to plug into the computer system and check for codes and communication with that circuit board in the totally integrated power module. So if that's something that you don't have, you'd have to leave it up to the guys at the dealership to do that for you.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time.
All right. You bet. You're welcome. Good luck. Okay.